49ers at the Steelers. Niners are favored by 2.5. Yesterday, Nick Bosa signed his contract. Weren't sure if he was going to be around for the game. Biggest contract in defensive player history, QB type money, because the Niners aren't paying a QB money anymore, so they could do that. Niners favored by 2.5. One of the best Week 1 matchups here, perhaps, because of all the hype for both teams. A lot of people think Niners are going back to the NFC Championship, and the Steelers are the up-and-coming darlings around NFL media.
I guess it depends how much you buy into the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm starting to buy into them quite a bit. Look, again, preseason, who knows? But in training camp and preseason, that first team Pittsburgh Steelers offense has looked spectacular. I mean, Kenny Pickett has been virtually flawless. We asked the question, is it actually a good thing when your quarterback doesn't throw any interceptions in training camp? Well, to be determined, but when he then goes and shows up in the preseason games and like every time he gets the ball, it's almost an instant touchdown, it's probably good. So that offense has the capacity to be very, very good. Kenny Pickett looks great. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens both look spectacular. Allen Robinson, who knows what he's going to bring to the table, but it's a great, roll of the dice. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren bringing some speed to the table. Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and an offensive line that's been slowly but steadily moving in the right direction over the last few years. Like, that offense could be really good.
I like the teams where you can name all those playmakers, and it's good.
And they're varied as well. They're not, all of one style. They're not all of one particular type of player. I didn't even mention Calvin Austin, who's making a bunch of plays in preseason as a returner or in the offense. Like, that's a very well-rounded and versatile group of playmakers.
I do hope that they look at Calvin Austin as their deep guy, their shot player, not just he's small, put him in the slot. I mean, put him outside and let him be that number 4 that gets 2 to 3 shots per game, and all you have to do is hit one of them for it to be a massive impact every single week.
There's a good chance they do, simply because, who else has that skill set within the offense? Like that. Deontay Johnson isn't really that type of player. Allen Robinson certainly isn't. George Pickens certainly isn't. Like, Calvin Austin brings that lightning, quick, and blazing speed to the table that nobody else really has in that offense, other than Jalen Warren maybe in the backfield, but you're not lining him out wide.
All right, sticking on that side of the ball, the Steelers' offensive line, Dan Moore still scheduled to start at left tackle. Fought off first-round pick Broderick Jones. Both of the tackles have been a little bit weaker for the Steelers. Dan Moore and Okorafor on the other side. Against this 49ers pass rush, the Niners get to unveil Javon Hargrave on the interior, but Nick Bosa coming back, of course. Eric Armstead's there. Your guy Drake Jackson, Cleveland Ferrell is there as well. So that's going to be a challenge, I think, for the Steelers up front for an offensive line that continues to look better and better every single year, but I think there's still questions at tackle in particular.
It is interesting that they haven't started Broderick Jones yet. Almost every team that drafts an offensive lineman in the first round is throwing that guy straight in somewhere, even if it's not necessarily the position they want him playing right away. The Steelers have said, no, we're comfortable enough with the starting tackles we have to at least bring him along slower than that. Now, maybe that'll only last a couple of weeks.
I think Dan Moore had a good camp, but he's been a below-average tackle for 2 years.
Yeah.
It's that balance of usually in year 3 or 4 the linemen get better versus throwing the rookie in there.
Right, and I think he'll be starting sooner rather than later. But it's interesting that they've decided already, after preseason training camp to not rush him in there, and they don't need to start in week 1.
Other thing to keep an eye on the other side of the ball. So you've got 2 new corners in Pittsburgh, Joey Porter Jr. as a rookie, Patrick Peterson coming in, year 12 or 13 for him. How are they going to cover all of these Niners playmakers? When those playmakers are all healthy, is there a more difficult cover in the NFL than Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey, with Kyle Shanahan calling the shots? I'm looking forward to seeing a full season now of all those guys playing together and how they lean into Christian McCaffrey and his versatility as well.
Yeah, and just how this defense generally tries to match up with that Kyle Shanahan 49ers offense with all those unique playmakers and what they can do. That's an extremely difficult thing for any team in the NFL. The Steelers are going to get first crack at it. Cameron Hayward has been questionable, but I think probably ends up playing. That's huge for them. TJ Watt is their most important player, I think, on defense, but Hayward is probably number 2. If he's not there, that's a real loss for them. But TJ Watt also a massive potential difference maker himself. I mean, we know on-off splits for defensive players are very noisy, but the ones for Pittsburgh tend to be pretty stark. And TJ Watt's had a lot of injuries to prove it either way. The second he's not on the field, it's a massive difference. And he's going up against Colton McKivitz, who's stepping in. You know, Mike McGlinchey moves on. McKivitz, a potential weak spot on that offensive line, going to get tested hard right away going up against as good as it gets in TJ Watt.
That is my matchup to watch there. McKivitz against TJ Watt. There's a lot of those. The tweet was out there yesterday, Nick Bosa, the Niners with and without Nick Bosa, and how often they win. The Steelers can do that with and without TJ Watt. I mean, the Niners with Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, only lost, one game? So something's got to give this weekend. There's a lot of both sides feeling pretty good about their health, their best players being available. It's Niners by 3.5. Again, just to remember and remind people why we will not overreact to week one. Like we will, but we won't deep down. Last year, in week one, the Bears beat the 49ers. The Bears, who finished with 3 wins. Mm-hmm. The 49ers, who were a game away from the Super Bowl.
Who were they, 2-1?
The Bears were 2-1. Now, it was a rainstorm in Chicago.
Yeah.
And Trey Lance was starting for the Niners.
What was it, No, that wasn't the cyclone bomb thing or whatever it was.
That was Niners Colts on Sunday Night Football 2 years ago.
Right.
Carson Wentz in there. But just saying, week one last year, the Niners lost to the Bears. Is that a factor at all this year? Is that a week one trend? Is it any of that stuff? But
I mean, I think it's just week one weirdness.
Yeah, I want to remind people when we're overreacting Sunday night and Monday morning that those things happened last year.
When we did our predictions, my general ethos was you pick the most likely thing to happen across the board, and you're probably going to end up reasonably well. Week one is almost the week where you don't do that. That's the worst possible approach because the most likely thing to happen does not happen in week one. Week one is weird. Several weird things will happen in week one. So if you're just picking, this is where the odds tell me to go, you're gonna be terrible.
So for week one, I like the Niners. I think they'll be good. I'm gonna take Pittsburgh. I'm gonna buy into the Pittsburgh hype here in week one.
Yeah, I'm buying the
Getting
Steelers
2.5 at home.
I mean, TJ Watt versus McKivitz. I also think Hayward, if he's playing, going up against the interior of that 49ers offensive line, which looks like a weakness as well. I mean, that's 2 spots up front where Pittsburgh, I think, has a big advantage. That's how you disrupt that 49ers offense. Forget trying to cover the uncoverable playmakers they have. Let's wreck shop right up front and make it so that they can't exploit those potential wins on the outside. So, yeah, I'm going Pittsburgh.